So any sort of leaving thoughts on area one, influence within the organization? Anything like that was a key takeaway for you that you would say, this is what I want you to know as a CS leader listening into this conversation that we're having?
The biggest thing for me is that I was really delighted to see how many people have budget autonomy, which I think is really important, obviously, as you're building out an organization. So like you said, titles can also be misleading, depending on the organization. So you have to take titles with a grain of salt. But to see the budget autonomy, that was really where I was like, okay, great. Now we have funds to spend on the initiatives that are important to supporting customers. And that's really exciting.
So can I turn that around? And
Please.
can I suggest that the key takeaway might be that budget autonomy delivers a lot of value for the customer success organization.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have it, that should be one of the key things that you are looking to get.
Right. I think that's a great summary of it. I think we often think about the titles because there tends to be a tie between title and that autonomy. But
it's not whether you're a C or a VP or a senior VP or a director or a senior director or a head or whatever. It's, are you autonomous? Do you have authority? Do you have influence? That is what you need to ask yourself. And if you do, what you're saying, your findings have shown, is that alongside that budget, you also happen to end up with more mature organizations that have better process in place, that have the right features and functions that enable you to deliver a better customer success service to customers, right?
Beautifully said. Yes.
Area two. Organizational alignment. Talk to me about that one. What was that all about, and what did you find in there?
Yeah, so we were looking at factors like interdepartmental collaboration, organizational charters, ownership of renewal, which is almost like a religious topic amongst CS leaders in some ways. Owner of expansion. And when we looked at that, all of that starts, as we were thinking about the results we got, all of that really starts with that organizational charter, because sort of the first focus, the primary way you define your customer success team is by saying, what are we responsible for? What are we held to? And what we found is that when we had our respondents rank the items that they were responsible for, if they were responsible for them, from like, this is our primary focus, secondary, third, so on and so forth. And at the top of that is onboarding, which is not surprising to me, given the things I've seen in the last few years. I think when organizations have a challenge with keeping customers or with customer satisfaction, that's a first area to sort of point out and say, are we getting them off to a good start? We all know that the start often defines the end. So there is often a really focus, that is the buds of a lot of customer success organizations, is that they get put in charge of defining and smoothing out that onboarding process. And then it's about the other portions that they get to start stepping into and taking over, be it engagement, be it renewals, those sorts of things. So to see onboarding sitting at the top of that was not surprising, though I'd love to see the other areas continue to, catch up to onboarding in that regard. Because I think if you say, oh, we did a good onboarding and now we're good, you're missing huge components of the customer lifecycle, so it's a key part, but it's not the only part.
It is absolutely a key part, and it is a part that could unlock the potential for value in other parts, but then you've still got to do those other parts, as you say.
Exactly. A marketing team would never be like, oh, we finally got someone to our website. Okay, we'll stop talking to them.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's all right. You got them over that first big hurdle, which is fabulous and really important.
Yeah.
But the work doesn't stop there.
I totally agree with you. So, okay. So organizational alignment is all about what you do and what you prioritize. We recently also conducted a survey, as I think and actually you were one of the sponsors for it. And we're currently going through the process of analyzing and writing the report. And one of the things that struck me there's a bit of an overlap in some of the questions. We're primarily looking at it from the training and CPD and sort of development perspective, as you would expect from a training company. But nevertheless, we were also asking about responsibilities, and we asked what are your primary responsibilities, i.e. the things that you are primarily tasked with above anybody else, they're your responsibility, and what were your secondary responsibilities, i.e. what were the things that you also do that perhaps you do with others or alongside and helping others. And what we saw was, without a doubt, the larger the organization and the more mature the organization, the less primary responsibilities there were. And the smaller the organization, and kind of by guesswork, the more recent customer success organizations, the more primary responsibilities they had. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we certainly saw the same thing, that as an organization gets bigger, they are more likely to have specialization, you know, because there's truth in the fact that you can only do so many things well. You can do a lot of stuff okay, but you can only do a smaller subset of things well, which is why as you grow and as you know,
this is, of course, is one of the big values of a big business, of a big organization. They have the luxury of a training department with professional trainers in. Well, then that means, well, training, you can take that off the list. Yeah, and so on and so forth. So whatever the items are that maybe were on that list, there's a as you say, there's a specialist function who can do that.
And I think the interesting thing that I always think about is, some people ask, like, well, should I be specializing? Will that make me better if I specialize? I think a lot of that is just, to your point, a manifestation of where you're at as an organization. And there are pros and cons on either side. For the pro on, I wear all the hats, is it can be easy to provide a very seamless customer experience there. They're going to one human for everything that they need. It can feel very, very safe. It can be great for relationship building. It can also be very overwhelming, and maybe in some ways you don't get the best results if a single person is, their expertise are being stretched. Exactly. Now, for those larger organizations that are starting to specialize, while there are certainly pros to that, people are coming in and doing the specific things that they're good at, you do have a real customer experience challenge then. How do you have, 3, 4, 5, 6 people who touch the customer and not have it feel like this, chaotic or confusing experience?
So what's the journey like for the
Exactly. So in either camp, there are good things, there are bad things, or challenges.
Of course, there were just very practical considerations of cost that means that we can't afford to have experts in everything when we're small, and we can begin to afford that through scales of economy. It makes sense to have somebody who's a specialist in, I don't know, in licensing, if you've got enough need for somebody to be full-time doing licensing.
Supply and demand.
Paying for something that is not going to deliver the value. So
absolutely.
Okay, so, and in organizational alignment, is there anything there in terms of key takeaways that you would like to leave us with on that one?
Yeah, when I think the part of this that was most interesting to me was the stuff around, do you own the renewal and do you own expansion?
Okay.
It is such a hot topic, and people will get really, really passionate about where they stand on this front. Actually, at our conference this past fall, we did an Oxford style debate around this exact topic. Should CS own the renewal? And we had very passionate people on both sides of that. I was personally very excited to see that about 50% of customer success teams own the renewal now. And that is a number that, while we haven't run this survey before, I feel quite confident is increasing. When I think about my experiences in the last few years in this space, I think owning that renewal is really important, because it means you've got a seat at the table because you are responsible for a key business metric. If you're just, I think a lot of times we see CS teams who struggle because it all feels soft.
Yeah, it's nebulous.
They're not exactly. They're not like, can I tell if you're doing a good job? Can I tell how what you do changes our numbers?
I know how much you cost me.
Yes. Can I tell how much you are giving me in return? And so when you own that renewal, the ability to draw the line to your direct lines to your value and how much value, which then is an incredibly strong thing to have when you're going for budget, when you're going for, tech purchases or whatever it is. So I was excited to see that to see the CS group really taking that on. It's still a little bit more of a mixed bag on expansion, which is not surprising to me, because I think expansion is also one of those funny things that can be really different organization to organization. Sometimes expansion fits beautifully within the CS, role. And then other times it is really, maybe you're going to a different team than what you've dealt with before, or something like that. It can really be better for sales.
It's very different if you're saying, well, you could go for gold on the product you've already purchased for the people that are already using it.
Exactly.
That's very different to saying, I've spotted a completely different department who needs a completely different product from a completely different portfolio that we sell.
Exactly.
And we've never met anyone in that department, and I'd like to introduce myself and start sort of marketing the concept of working with us. It's a very, very different
it truly is
job.
It truly is. Yeah. So I think
it does lead the question. So because I think you got sales on one side and customer success on the other side, and you got something called account management, which you could argue is in the middle. Where do you think that's going?
I see more and more account management teams. I want to say being replaced sounds so terrible, like a terrible way to say it, but account management has really traditionally been a business relationship. And the idea of customer success is that if you focus on value and outcomes and experience and relationship, then the business side comes along naturally. It's the renewal is just a continuation of your relationship, as opposed to this sort of disparate transactional event that happens. I think one of the reasons that customer success, that 100% of customer success doesn't own the renewal, is that there is this idea of, if you're good at getting people to a point of value with a product, you're not going to be good at talking about money. Like, those two things don't collide. And I actually disagree with that, especially if the idea is that the renewal should just be a continuation of the existing relationship. It should be an easy thing to get if you've delivered on the benefit that you promised. So that's where we also did see a few, a not unsubstantial number of groups that have CS and have sales and then have a totally separate team that handles just the renewal. Not even that they call it account management. It's like they just handle the renewal. And
the renewals team. Yeah.
I got to think about that one. I was surprised that as many people had that as they did.
So I could see for myself, it is interesting, Abby. And I would say from my point of view, there is a technical side to renewals, right? Which is a technical job, which is actually nothing to do with like relationships and understanding the customer even, right? Where it's like an accountancy job. Okay? What you want is the facts, and you want the facts presented in exactly the right way every time with the person who's skilled at dotting I's, crossing T's, and adding up the columns. Okay, you're not asking for creative thinking here. Okay?
That's true. That's true. And depending on the complexity of your renewal, having that person who can come in and do that.
Yeah. I mean, there was like almost like a black art when I was working alongside Cisco, who have a massive portfolio, and there's like, and they would have customers who've got license after license after. They've got so many licenses that they don't know what licenses they've got, and none of them started or end at the same time. Some of them are for groups, some of them are for the enterprise, some of them are for individuals, some of them are per server, some of them are per seat, some of them are this, some of them are right. And then like, there's a whole bunch of special discounts to be applied because you're this type company in that area with that discount applying because you've got. Oh my goodness, it took an expert just to understand the complexity.
What the heck was going on? Oh yeah.
That sort of, I could see where a renewals team, which is actually just do the math and tell me what the best option is.
Exactly. Like, yes.
That I think is valuable. And I think that, that is a role for a certain type of person as well.
Correct. Okay. Yes.
And I think that is appropriate. What I don't so much like is the idea of a salesy salesperson coming in and needing to do salesy sales, and particularly as you say around renewals, because to my mind, and perhaps I'm just going to be a little bit out there, and feel free to slap me down yourself or others in comments afterwards. But to me, if you are trying to get a renewal in month 12, you're wasting your time. Right? there is no renewal in month 12. What there is a relationship over the entire year where you both already know whether you're going to renew or not, because you've already proven the value all the way through the year. It's about what you do all through the year that gets you the renewal, not what you do at the last minute.
100%. And that's why, when people ask me what my personal opinion is about whether CS should own the renewal, it's a resounding yes.
Oh yeah, because it's part of what they do all through the year. It's not
exactly. Exactly. It should be ideally, it's kind of a non-event.
It absolutely is. Is that you don't need to discuss it. You need to check it, but you don't need to discuss it because it's already been agreed, because you've already had all the conversations all the way along the line.
That's my. If they're going to yell at us in comments, they're going to yell at us both, Rick. So we're at least we're in it together.
Hooray! Okay, better move on. So area 3 then is customer success operations. So now we're moving not so much from what you do to how you do it, right?
Exactly. So this was really, when Churnzero thinks about the future of customer success as an organization, as a part of the organization, our goal is it is the most efficient, best performing department in the organization. And a lot of what we've seen our counterparts in sales and marketing do, paves a certain part of the way for us. The elimination of repetitive or inefficient processes, like that's the heart of how we do business now, especially in a SaaS space. So really what this section was focused on is, okay, as you're looking at running your team, what are you using to do that? What do you focus on? So this was a bit more around the tech stack, frankly, that sits with CS, which Churnzero obviously has an interest in.
Very much major player in, yeah. Of course.
Exactly. So some of this is we did dive into how many people have a dedicated CS platform. And that came in at 47% have a dedicated CS platform. And that is a number I expect to go up. And again, anecdotally, since we haven't done this survey before, I believe has gone up, in the last few years.
Wouldn't surprise me, yes. And I'm assuming that the remainder are either very small, very new, or have some sort of CRM tool that they are using.
It's that CRM. So that there's still this very interesting conversation happening in our space around, like, do you need something besides your CRM? And absolutely. My stance on that
is it, and if you do, is it an add-on to CRM?
Right.
As opposed to something else. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, how does it play in amongst, the other stuff that's in your tech stack?
Right.
To me, the fact that we're still asking that question is a sign of, that the fact that the space still needs to mature. Right. We'd never go to a CMO and say, do you really need a marketing automation solution, or can't you just kind of do that with the CRM? We wouldn't ask a sales, a head of sales to not have certain enablement tools for their team.